Hey friends, tonight we journey back not to darkness, but to the deep, slow rhythms of time. We're going to whisper our way through millennia, tracing the ancient whispers of a plant, humble yet profound, a silent architect of civilization. So, find your quiet space, maybe dim the lights. Let the soft hum of a fan or the gentle murmur of rain outside be your lullaby. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. A journey into patience, into stillness, into the quiet unfolding of life. As you settle in, perhaps share in the comments where you are tuning in from and what gentle hour it is for you. A small connection as we drift through vast stretches of time. And if this quiet unfolding resonates with you, consider a gentle like, a soft subscription. Only if it truly feels right, of course. Tonight, we're diving into the extraordinary, patient story of something so utterly ordinary, corn. Imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of a vast silence. You are suspended above a valley, somewhere in the highlands of what we now call Mexico, thousands upon thousands of years ago. The air around you is thick with warmth, a gentle, pervasive heat that soaks into the very marrow of your bones. A warmth born of relentless sun and ancient, sun-baked earth. There is a wind here, an old wind, a constant breath exhaling across this high plateau. It is a dry wind, not harsh or biting, but soft and persistent, carrying with it the whisper of countless seasons, the memory of rain long past, and the faint, almost imperceptible scent of dust and parched grass. This wind moves with a leisurely grace, weaving through the invisible currents of the air, a languid dance across the vast open stage of the valley. You can almost feel its subtle pressure against your skin, a delicate feather, light caress that hints at the immense distances it has traveled. It carries no urgency, no immediate message, only the quiet story of the land. Its sound is a muted rustle, a soft, continuous sighing as it brushes against unseen foliage, a delicate murmur that settles into the background of your awareness, becoming a part of the quietude itself. It is the sound of the world breathing, slowly, deeply, without haste. With each invisible current, the air grows warmer, drier still. It tastes of the sun, of mineral, rich soil, of the delicate, almost elusive fragrance of wild herbs that bake beneath the unyielding sky. Look out across the valley now. The distant mountains rise like sleeping giants, their contours softened by the haze of heat and the passage of untold ages. They are silent sentinels, watching over this primordial stage, their ancient flanks a tapestry of muted greens and sun-bleached browns, etched with the scars of millennia. They speak of an enduring stillness, a deep, unwavering presence that predates all human memory. There is no sound of distant traffic, no hum of machinery, no clamor of human voices. Only the wind and the profound, humbling silence that stretches from horizon to horizon. A silence so vast, it feels as though it could absorb all the echoes of time. This stillness is not empty. It is pregnant with the potential of life, with the quiet energy of a world still shaping itself, still waiting for its stories to fully unfold. The sunlight, a golden wash, bathes everything in an unchanging glow, highlighting the subtle textures of the earth, the delicate shimmer of heat rising from the ground. It is a light that has seen countless dawns and dusks, a light that has warmed the same stones, the same soil, for 10,000 years and more. Let this gentle warmth, this soft, dry breath of ancient air, and this profound, echoing silence settle over you. This is the overture, the patient beginning, the vast, slow inhale before a story begins to quietly unfold. It is a place of primal peace, where time itself seems to slow, where every rustle of wind is a chapter, and every breath is a geological era. You are here, and the world is waiting. In this deep quiet, amidst the subtle swaying of wild grasses, our protagonist makes its humble debut. It is not a grand entrance, not a towering tree or a vibrant blossom, but a plant so unassuming, so easily overlooked, that you might walk past it 100 times without a second glance. This is teosinte, the wild ancestor of corn, a plant whose name means God's grain in Nahuatl, though its initial appearance offers little hint of such divine potential. Imagine a wild grass, tall and reedy, perhaps reaching your waist or even your chest, but still, undeniably, just agreste. Its stems are slender, almost delicate in their appearance, yet surprisingly resilient, branching out into multiple shoots, a chaotic tangle of green that blends seamlessly with the surrounding vegetation. It doesn't stand out with bright colors or bold structures. It is the epitome of blending in, a master of inconspicuous survival. Each stem of this ancient plant is adorned, not with the robust, golden ears we know today, but with something far more modest, almost shy. Its fruits are tiny, minuscule even, a collection of solitary seeds, perhaps only 5 to 12 kernels, arranged in a single, rather unimpressive row along a fragile spike. And these kernels, they are the true marvel of evolutionary perseverance, yet a testament to the sheer effort required for their consumption. Each one is a fortress, a tiny, self-contained bastion of starch, enveloped not by the soft, pliable husk of modern corn, but by a shell as hard and unyielding as stone. It's a casing so tough, so impenetrable, that it seems almost purposefully designed to resist any attempt at extraction. To touch one of these ancient kernels, you would feel a pebble-like hardness, a dense, unyielding surface that offers no hint of the sustenance contained within. It is not just firm, it is not rock like a miniature geological specimen. And to consider the task of accessing the meager starch inside, it would be an exercise in extreme patience and determined effort. There is no easy peeling, no satisfying crack. To obtain even a handful of these tiny grains would require a laborious process of crushing, hammering, or grinding, a relentless chipping away at nature's armor. Imagine the sound of it, a faint, persistent tapping, stone against seed, over and over, until the hard shell finally concedes, revealing a fraction of an edible reward. The yield from a single plant would be pitifully small, a testament to the immense evolutionary journey yet to come. The teosinte plant itself, with its multiple sprawling branches, is a study in wild growth. Unlike the singular, upright stalk of modern corn, teosinte is a bushier, more anarchic presence, its energy dispersed across many small fruiting bodies rather than concentrated into a few large ones. Its leaves are thin and elongated, rustling softly in the dry wind, a green backdrop for its tiny, hard-shelled offerings. It's a plant designed for survival in the wild, its seeds perfectly adapted to scatter and endure, each one an individual package of protected genetic material, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. It has no need for human intervention. In fact, its very design seems to resist it, guarding its precious contents with a formidable, stony resolve. This wild grass, in its quiet, persistent existence, holds the blueprint of an entire future. A future it cannot yet perceive, a future shaped by the slow, gentle, and utterly patient hands of time and of early humanity. It stands there, an unassuming sentinel, unaware that its humble structure conceals the genetic potential for one of the world's most vital crops, a potential that waits patiently for a subtle nudge, a quiet selection, a slow evolutionary dance to begin. Our story, this journey into the profound patience of nature and humanity, begins in a very specific place, a geographical cradle nestled in the heart of what is now Mexico. We turn our gaze to the Balsas River Basin, a region that, 10,000 years ago, was already ancient, already humming with the quiet processes of life and decay, growth and renewal. It is a valley etched into the earth, a vast, undulating landscape where the very rhythms of existence were dictated by the sky and the flow of water. Here, the Balsas River, a lifeline meandering through the terrain, had for eons been carving its path, depositing rich, alluvial soil along its banks. These fertile river terraces, flat and expansive, were the prime real estate of the ancient world, natural gardens nurtured by the river's bounty. Picture these terraces, stretches of dark, rich earth, periodically refreshed and enriched by the seasonal rains and the gentle flooding of the river. The soil here would have been soft, amenable to growth, a stark contrast to the surrounding landscape. On either side of the river's green embrace, the dry mountain slopes would rise, arid and rugged, covered in scrub and sparse, tough vegetation for desiccation, fooding a testament to the region's generally dry climate. But it was this interplay, this gentle tension between the life-giving water and the parched, unyielding rock that created the perfect stage. The river, and its endless meanderings, would have left behind not only fertile soil but also pockets of moisture, creating microclimates where certain plants, like our teosinte, could flourish, could find purchase, could begin their quiet ascent. The climate here was one of distinct seasonality. Periods of generous, life-sustaining rain would transform the valley, awakening the dormant seeds, swelling the river, and painting the terraces in vibrant shades of green. Then, the long dry season would settle in, baking the earth, causing the river to recede, and turning the mountain slopes to a brittle golden brown. This cycle, repeated over countless millennia, was not a hardship, but a sculptor. It favored plants that could adapt, that could patiently await the rains, that could guard their seeds through periods of scarcity. Teosinte, with its robust, wild nature and its hard-shelled kernels, was perfectly suited to this rhythm. It was a survivor, thriving in the margins, between the wet and the dry, between the fertile and the arid. This valley, then, was not just a place. It was an environment, a dynamic ecosystem, where the subtle forces of geology, climate, and botany converged. It was a natural laboratory, a patient crucible, where the slow, incremental processes of evolution could unfold. The fertile riverbanks provided a relatively stable habitat, a place where successive generations of teosinte could grow, where slight variations might emerge, where the earliest interactions between plant and nascent human populations could quietly begin. The gentle slope of the terraces, the way the sunlight fell upon the earth, the very composition of the soil sin, All these elements contributed to making the Balsas River Basin not just a setting, but a vital character in our story. It was here, in this ancient, silent theater, that the stage was set for one of the most remarkable transformations in the history of human civilization and agricultural development. A transformation that would begin not with a bang, but with a whisper, carried on the dry wind of a 10,000-year-old dawn, the ancient gaze. Not a heroic moment, no flash of insight, no sudden revelation. Just another sunrise painting the vast expanse of the Balsas River Valley with hues of muted gold and soft ochre. The air, crisp from the receding coolness of night, carried the faint, earthy scent of damp soil still exhaling the last remnants of dew. Overhead, the sun began its slow, deliberate climb, turning the distant mountain ridges into jagged silhouettes against an ever-brightening sky. Beneath this sprawling canvas of quiet majesty, small bands of humans moved. Not with urgency, not with the focused intent of hunters tracking elusive game, but with the steady, measured pace of those engaged in the eternal dance of sustenance. Their eyes, keen from generations of intimate connection with the land, scanned the verdant tapestry of the valley floor. They sought the familiar, the nourishing, the countless small gifts that the wilderness offered, wild fruits ripening on thorny bushes, the succulent roots buried deep beneath the earth, the tender shoots that unfurled with the promise of spring. Their hands, calloused and nimble, moved with a practiced rhythm, sifting through leaves, probing the soil, plucking and gathering. Among the sprawling vegetation, a particular plant, tall and slender, with a robust stalk and multiple branches, caught their attention. It was not striking, not overtly alluring like a brightly colored berry or a thick, meaty root. It was simply forti, another component of the edible landscape known to them, understood in its modest offerings. This was teosinte, the wild ancestor of corn, a plant that at first glance seemed almost deliberately designed to be unappealing, a botanical riddle guarding its secrets with formidable resilience. The process of acquiring its bounty was a daily ritual of patience and persistent effort. Imagine a hand worn smooth by work, reaching out to pluck one of its small, inconspicuous ears. Each ear was a marvel of defensive engineering, a tiny fortress of sustenance. Unlike the generous, naked kernels of modern corn, each individual teosinte grain was encased in an armor of almost stony hardness. Not just a husk, but a solid, almost impenetrable shell, often dark and mottled, providing an impressive barrier against hungry insects and curious animals. And humans, too. To obtain the meager starch within, one had to work. A rough stone, perhaps picked up from the riverbed, would be selected, its weight and texture familiar in the palm. Then, with deliberate, rhythmic taps, the small teosinte ear would be subjected to a careful, precise assault. The sound was distinct in the quiet valley, a soft, insistent foon clink, followed by a faint crunche as the stone met the unyielding shell. There was no instant gratification, no sudden burst of exposed kernels. Instead, it was a slow, almost meditative process of fracturing, chipping away at the tough exterior. Sometimes the shell would yield with a satisfying snap. Other times it would merely dent, requiring more force, more taps, more concentration. The reward for this labor was, by modern standards, laughably small. Once cracked open, often splitting unevenly, the shell revealed not a multitude, but perhaps 2 or 3, rarely more, tiny, elongated kernels. These were not the plump, golden nuggets we recognize today. They were often dark, irregularly shaped, and still somewhat fibrous. Their taste, a muted, earthy sweetness, barely a whisper of the sugary burst of modern corn. It was starch, pure and simple, a dense caloric contribution to a diet perpetually on the edge of scarcity. A few handfuls of these hard-won kernels might provide a brief, fleeting sense of fullness, a temporary silencing of the gnawing hunger. This was the daily reality. Not a triumphant discovery, but a quiet, almost resigned acceptance of the plant's difficult nature. The effort expended for each precious kernel was significant. Hours might be spent foraging, tapping, and collecting, all for a return that would barely register on a modern nutritional scale. It was a testament to the resourcefulness and the sheer, unending determination of early humans, who understood implicitly that every caloric intake, no matter how hard, contributed to the continuation of life. The rhythmic tapping of stone on teosinte, almost imperceptible against the vastness of the landscape, was a constant, enduring sound, an ancient melody of survival. In the vast tapestry of life in the ancient valley, the rhythms of existence unfolded with an almost imperceptible slowness. Each day brought its challenges, its small victories, its endless cycle of searching and gathering. For generations, the teosinte plant had been a part of this cycle, a known quantity, its stony shell a familiar hurdle to overcome. The humans who moved through the landscape were not botanists or geneticists. They were simply living, seeking the most efficient path to survival, an immediate satisfaction for the rumblings of hunger. And then one day, or perhaps across many days, across many seasons, something subtly shifted. It was not a cataclysmic event, not a sudden mutation that transformed the plant overnight into something radically new. It was far more quiet, far more unassuming. Imagine a gatherer perhaps bending low amongst the rustling leaves, their fingers brushing against the familiar rough texture of a teosinte stalk. Their eyes, accustomed to discerning the smallest variations in the plant life around them, might have lingered for a moment longer on a particular ear. Perhaps the color was slightly different, a shade less green, a hint more yellow. Or maybe, as their thumb and forefinger closed around it, the husk felt marginally less rigid, a minuscule give where others were utterly unyielding. There would have been no conscious thought of mutation or genetic variation, only a fleeting, almost subconscious observation. This one feels a little softer. When the time came to crack open the ears, this particular one might have yielded with a fraction less effort. The stone might have met the schnell with a slightly different sound, a duller furfty, instead of a sharp third clink, indicating a less dense, less resisted material. And when it finally split, revealing its precious cargo, the kernels inside might have been just a hair plumper, a fraction larger, perhaps even a shade lighter in color. The taste, too, might have registered as slightly less fibrous, a touch more starchy, a minuscule improvement in palatability. This was not a moment of scientific discovery. It was a moment of immediate practical benefit, less effort expended for the same, or even slightly greater reward. In a world where every calorie counted, where every ounce of energy was carefully conserved, such a tiny difference held a disproportionate weight. This particular teosinte ear, with its subtly softer shell and marginally larger kernels, became the preferred choice. It was easier to process, perhaps marginally more filling, a little more agreeable to the palate. The gatherer would have unconsciously favored it. Perhaps they would have collected more ears from that specific plant. Perhaps they would have gone out of their way to seek out similar plants on subsequent foraging trips. It wasn't a deliberate act of breeding, not a conscious selection for future generations. It was a purely pragmatic decision driven by the immediate needs of hunger and the desire for efficiency. This variant, however slight, simply offered a marginally better return on the investment of effort. This preference, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, began to ripple outwards. Other gatherers, observing the ease with which a companion processed a particular type of teosinte, might have started to seek it out themselves. The knowledge, unspoken and instinctive, would have passed through the group. Look for the ones with a slightly smoother feel, or the ones that don't fight the stone so hard. The selection was unconscious, driven by convenience and small, immediate advantages. There was no grand plan, no foresight into the millennia, long transformation that would follow. Only the quiet, continuous dance of survival, where even the smallest genetic whisper, offering a fraction more ease or a hint more sustenance, could begin to redirect the slow, powerful current of evolution. This was the first gentle nudge, an almost imperceptible turning point, guided not by intellect but by the persistent, unyielding hand of necessity. The favorite teosinte, with its slightly softer shells and marginally plumper kernels, began its subtle journey back to the human encampments. These small, nomadic groups moved through the valley, establishing temporary shelters, hearths and gathering points. Around these sites, the ground was subtly altered. The earth was disturbed by footsteps, by the digging of roots, by the clearing of small patches for temporary use. Animal bones, discarded plant matter, and the ashes from countless fires enriched the soil, creating pockets of fertility distinct from the wilder landscape. As the gatherers returned to their settlements, the process of transformation continued, still entirely without conscious human intent. Imagine the scene: a small gathering of people around a crackling fire, the smoke curling upwards into the evening sky, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and roasting seeds. They are processing the day's harvest, tapping open the teosinte ears, meticulously extracting the precious kernels. As they work, some of these kernels inevitably escape their grasp. A hard tap sends a piece of a shattered husk, still clinging to a kernel, bouncing onto the ground. A hand reaching for another ear accidentally knocks a few loose grains into the dirt. A child, idly chewing on a raw kernel, spits out a piece or simply drops it. These seemingly insignificant moments of spill and discard were in fact the silent architects of domestication. The lost kernels, the accidentally dropped seeds, now found themselves not in the dense competition of the wild forest, but in the relatively open, disturbed and fertile grounds surrounding human habitation. This was a critical difference. In the deep wild, any fallen teosinte seed would face fierce competition from a multitude of other plants, all vying for sunlight, water, and nutrients. But near human settlements, this competition was often less intense. Humans, even unconsciously, cleared away some of the more aggressive vegetation simply by existing and moving through the area. Moreover, the soil itself was often more hospitable. The constant activity, the accumulation of organic waste, the nutrient-rich ashes from cooking fires, all contributed to a microenvironment that was subtly more favorable for germination and growth. The discarded seeds now had a slight advantage. They were planted, not by design, but by accident, in what amounted to the earliest, most rudimentary form of a cultivated bed. When these accidentally sown seeds sprouted and grew, they were already the progeny of the preferred variants, the ones with the slightly softer shells, the marginally larger kernels. And because they grew in a less competitive environment, they had a better chance of thriving, of reaching maturity, and of producing their own seeds. The cycle continued. The next time the gatherers went out to forage, they wouldn't just look to the distant wildlands. They would also scan the area immediately surrounding their camp. Here they would find plants that, by chance, had grown from the spilled seeds of their ancestors. These camp-grown teosinte plants would already exhibit the very traits that had made their parent seeds desirable in the first place: easier to harvest, slightly more rewarding. This wasn't a conscious act of planting or selection. It was a gradual, almost imperceptible feedback loop. The more humans favored certain traits, the more likely those seeds were to be brought back to camp. The more seeds were brought back to camp, the more likely they were to be accidentally sown in the disturbed, fertile ground nearby. The more they grew near camp, the more likely they were to be encountered again by foragers seeking the easiest sustenance. Over countless generations, this quiet, unconscious preference, amplified by the accidental dynamics of human settlement, began to shape the genetic makeup of the teosinte plant. It was a process that unfolded not over years, but over millennia. Thousands of years, each generation making tiny, almost invisible choices, each choice a whisper in the vast genetic symphony. No single individual ever witnessed a full transformation. No one generation awoke to find a radically different plant than the one their parents had known. The changes were glacial, imperceptible within a human lifetime, yet relentlessly cumulative. The tough, stony outer shell, once a formidable barrier, began its slow retreat. Through countless cycles of accidental sowing and unconscious preference, those genes that coded for slightly thinner, slightly softer pericarp layers gained an advantage. Over time, the energy that the plant once invested in building that rock-hard armor was subtly redirected, perhaps towards producing a slightly larger kernel or a slightly more robust stalk. The change was not a dramatic leap, but a multitude of minuscule steps, each one pushing the plant a fraction closer to its domesticated form. The number of kernels per ear also began to increase, ever so slowly. Wild teosinte typically had only a few, often just 2 or 3, kernels per fruit case. But with the gentle pressure of human preference, for those that offered a fraction more, the genetic variants that allowed for more kernels, or slightly larger individual kernels, were implicitly favored. It was a quiet, relentless selection, a gradual reshaping of the plant's architecture, driven by the simplest of human desires: more food for less effort. This was the profound elegance of unconscious domestication. It required no scientific knowledge, no agricultural foresight. It merely required time, the constant presence of human activity, and the consistent, though unspoken, preference for ease and reward. From scattered seeds falling onto disturbed earth, from the quiet hum of human life, an entirely new species was being coaxed into existence, one genetic whisper at a time. The wilderness was slowly giving way, not to human domination, but to an ancient, silent partnership, a dance between plant and people, spanning not just generations, but the very expanse of epochs. The genes changed, one imperceptible shift after another, guided by the almost invisible hand of millions of small, daily, practical choices. It is here, in these quiet, unhurried millennia, that the true magic of transformation began to unfold, not with a sudden flourish, not with a dramatic declaration, but with the quiet, persistent whisper of change, carried on the slow currents of time and the gentle hand of early human interaction. Imagine, if you will, the tiny, unassuming ancestor teosinte. Its kernels, barely larger than a grain of rice, were not openly offered to the world. No, they were ensconced, each solitary seed, within an armor of truly remarkable density. A casing, often described as stone, like a gloom so unyielding it required considerable effort, a sharp stone, or the brute force of a heavy hand, to crack open. It was a fortress, an impregnable vault safeguarding its precious, starchy treasure. This was the way of teosinte, a plant seemingly designed for scarcity, for the utmost challenge in its consumption. Every morsel gleaned was a testament to the sheer will and ingenuity of those who sought it. The crack of the gloom, a small percussive sound in the vast stillness of the ancient valley, would have been a familiar signal of effort, of perseverance, a tiny victory for a hungry gatherer. The rough, jagged edges of the broken casing would have felt sharp against the fingertips, a testament to its stubborn refusal to yield. But then the quiet shift, over countless generations, carried on the silent winds of genetic mutation, a small, almost imperceptible change occurred. Perhaps one tiny kernel on one unassuming stalk developed a gloom that was marginally less robust, a fraction softer, a whisper thinner than its brethren. It might have been so slight, so subtle, that it would have passed unnoticed by the casual observer. But to a gatherer whose every calorie counted, whose survival hinged on efficiency, this minute difference was a revelation. It meant less effort to crack, a fraction more time saved, a hint of ease in an otherwise arduous task. This seed, ever so slightly more yielding, would have been chosen first, perhaps unconsciously. Its progeny, carrying the faint promise of this gentler casing, would have had a minuscule advantage. They would have been the ones more likely to be carried back to the temporary settlements, more likely to be consumed, and crucially, more likely for some of their undigested seeds to be scattered, and thus given a chance to sprout anew in the disturbed earth near human activity. This was not a conscious breeding program, not in the way we understand it today. It was a dance of accidental preferences, a slow, meandering river of choices made out of pure instinctual survival. Each generation, the ones with the 6 slightly softer glooms were favored. The ones that broke with a little less force, that revealed their starchy heart with a touch more grace. Imagine the cumulative effect, not over years, but over 1,000 years. A shell that once demanded a sharp stone and a deliberate blow might, after 300 human generations, only require a firm press between 2 stones. The sound of its cracking would have softened from a sharp seftus snap to a gentler thuftus, eventually becoming almost silent, a mere tear of fiber. The appearance of the kernel itself would have started to change too, responding to the diminishing constraint. Freed from its rock-like prison, it could afford to grow a little plumper, a little more rounded, less elongated and angular. The surface, once rough from the friction of its casing, would begin to feel smoother, more tender to the touch. The gloom, once a formidable barrier, would gradually recede, becoming thinner and thinner, like a forgotten memory of its former strength. it would morph from a solid, impenetrable wall to a pliable husk, then to a fragile membrane, almost translucent in its delicacy. The harsh, protective armor slowly, almost politely, began to dissolve, revealing the soft, starchy vulnerability within. This process was like the slow erosion of a mighty cliff face by the persistent action of wind and water. Except here, the wind and water were human hands and human hunger. The plant itself was learning through its genetic code what humans preferred. It was an unspoken negotiation across millennia. Make yourself easier to access, the humans silently requested with every preferred seed. And I shall, the plant subtly answered, through every successive generation that exhibited a slightly softer casing. Finally, after thousands upon thousands of harvests, after countless hands had patiently shelled and pounded, the hard outer shell, the ancient armor of teosinte, did not just thin, it effectively disappeared. It became nothing more than a whisper of fibers, a mere suggestion of its former self, loosely adhering to the now plump, exposed kernels. The once solitary, fiercely guarded seeds were now presented openly, vulnerable yet accessible, clinging directly to the developing cob. This was a profound moment, a quiet revolution in the plant world. The need for tools to process the grain was vastly reduced, making the food source far more efficient, far more available to the hands that had so patiently nurtured its transformation. The raw, unprotected surface of the kernels, now tender and ready, invited touch, invited consumption, a testament to the incredible silent power of this long, slow partnership between plant and patient, discerning human. The journey from a hard, solitary bead to an exposed, yielding kernel was complete, a testament to the unhurried hand of natural selection, guided by the gentle pressure of human need. And so, as the hard shell softened and receded, another equally profound, equally slow transformation was taking place within the very architecture of the plant itself. Picture again the wild teosinte, a testament to untamed growth. It was a plant of many branches, a bustling, leafy tangle where each individual seed, still encased in its formidable gloom, grew in a somewhat scattered fashion along these numerous spindly stalks. Imagine the effort involved in harvesting such a plant, hands reaching into the dense foliage, searching, plucking, one by one, the few precious seeds from their dispersed locations. It was a scavenger hunt, a laborious quest for a meager return, a process demanding patience and meticulous attention. Little reward for so much effort. But just as the shell began its slow retreat, the plant's very form started to reconfigure, as if consciously optimizing for the very hands that would harvest it. The numerous, widely dispersed branches, once a defining characteristic, began to draw inward. It was not a violent retraction, but a subtle, genetic drawing together, a shortening and thickening of the plant's reproductive structures. Imagine the individual pods of seeds, which previously might have been separated by several inches of stem, now clustering more tightly. Over time, these clusters became denser, more concentrated, until the very idea of a separate branch for each scattering of seeds began to fade. What emerged from this millennia? Long process was truly remarkable. The individual seed, bearing branches over countless generations, began to fuse. They coalesced, not into a chaotic clump, but into an organized, complex structure. The individual seeds, once scattered along separate stems, now found themselves aligned, side by side, their genetic programming guiding them to grow in neat, orderly rows along a newly formed central axis. This was the birth of the primitive corn cob. This central axis, known botanically as the Rockies, was a marvel of biological engineering, an innovation brought about by thousands of years of unconscious human selection. From a plant that scattered its seeds inefficiently across many points, nature, nudged by human preference, had created a singular consolidated unit. The energies of the plant, once dispersed in supporting multiple, thin branches, were now channeled into building the single robust structure. It was an evolutionary streamlining, a quiet declaration of efficiency. Consider the visual impact of this transformation. From a wild, bushy plant, its few, hard seeds hidden amidst a labyrinth of stems and leaves, there gradually arose a plant with a clearly defined, much larger, and easily recognizable ear of grain. The kernels, now softer and without their formidable gloom, were no longer singular prizes to be painstakingly sought out. Instead, they were presented in abundance, arranged with an almost mathematical precision along this developing central shaft. The sight of these emerging rows, each kernel nestled beside its neighbor, would have been a profoundly satisfying experience for the early cultivators. The harvesting method itself underwent a quiet revolution. No longer was it a tedious search for individual seeds on scattered branches. Now, a gatherer could simply grasp a single, substantial ear, a heavy cluster of sustenance, with one hand. The feeling of that nascent cob, plump and organized, growing directly from the main stalk, would have been an entirely new sensation. It represented a vastly more efficient way of collecting food, a huge return on investment for the labor involved in its cultivation. This transformation from a multi-branched, scattered, seed plant to one bearing a singular, compact cob was a testament to the incremental power of selection. Each generation, the plants that showed a slight tendency toward more clustered, more organized seed arrangement were favored. Their seeds, easier to collect, were more likely to be saved and replanted, slowly but inexorably shaping the genetic destiny of the species. It was a slow-motion sculpture, carved by the twin forces of mutation and human interaction, stretching across thousands of years, leading to the familiar, iconic shape of the corn cob we recognize today. The transition from dispersed bounty to centralized abundance was complete, profoundly altering not just the plant, but the relationship between humanity and its most important crop. As the plant itself underwent these profound transformations, quietly shedding its armor and reorganizing its very architecture, a parallel revolution was unfolding in the human communities that tended it. The shift was subtle, born not of sudden epiphany, but of countless observations and incremental changes in behavior. For generations, perhaps even millennia, the relationship with teosinte had been one of gathering. People would venture into the wild, searching for the scattered plants, patiently cracking their tough shells, and bringing back whatever small bounty they could find. It was a dance of discovery, of following the rhythms of nature, taking what was offered. But as teosinte gradually, almost imperceptibly, began its journey towards becoming mazed and shedding, its hard gloom, consolidating its seeds onto a central cob, thudi human behavior began to shift in kind. The seeds, now easier to process, more abundant on a single stalk, presented a new possibility. Instead of just consuming every seed, What if some were fight-kept-tied? What if the very best ones, the ones that were the plumpest, the easiest to open, the most prolific on their stalk, were set aside? This simple act of saving, of deliberate preservation, marked a crucial turning point. It was the birth of foresight, the understanding that a seed held not just a meal, but the promise of future meals. From this simple act of saving came the even more profound act of planting. It was not a sudden, grand agricultural experiment, but a humble beginning, born from observation and necessity. Early human settlements, no longer entirely nomadic, would have established semi-permanent or permanent dwellings. Around these dwellings, the ground would have been disturbed, cleared of dense natural vegetation by the continuous activity of daily life, fires, waste disposal, foot traffic. These small, cleared patches, often enriched by organic matter, would have been ideal spots for accidental germination. Perhaps at first it was truly accidental. A discarded kernel dropped near a hut, sprouting and growing into a plant that surprisingly yielded better than its wild counterparts further afield. The proximity to human care, to less competition, to perhaps slightly richer soil might have given it an edge. These chance occurrences would have been noted. The seeds from sorty-theside plants, growing conveniently close, would have been preferred. Then came the conscious decision, a quiet intention. Imagine the scene, a small, cleared patch of earth, perhaps just a few square meters painstakingly prepared near a dwelling. Stones might have been removed, larger weeds pulled. The soil, perhaps still coarse and uneven, would have offered a promise of growth. The tool was as simple as the intent, a wooden stick. Not a shovel, not a plow, but a simple, sturdy branch, perhaps sharpened slightly at one end by fire or stone. With this stick, a person would bend low, kneeling or squatting on the earth. The rhythm would be slow, deliberate, almost meditative. First thrust, asterisk, the stick would pierce the soil, creating a small, shallow depression. A soft, earthy thud as it entered the ground, followed by a slight scraping sound as it was gently twisted to widen the hole. The soil, rich with the scent of damp earth and ancient minerals, would yield to the simple pressure. Then, from a small pouch or a cupped hand, a precious seed, 41 of those carefully chosen, better seeds, 40 would be gently dropped into the freshly made cavity. A small 40 plink when as it settled, a moment's pause, and then the careful covering, a gentle push of the foot or a sweep of the hand to draw the loose soil over the seed, tucking it into its new home. This act would be repeated row after row in a patient, rhythmic cadence. The sun would beat down, the wind would whisper through the nearby trees, and the only sounds would be the soft TVD, the stick. Of the stick, the quiet fin plink, of the seed and the rustle of earth being replaced. It was a silent conversation with the land, a slow, hopeful investment in the future. This was not merely gathering, this was fin cultivation. It was a profound shift in humanity's relationship with the natural world Tumbi, from passive taker to active participant, from hunter-gatherer to farmer. These first fields were not sprawling expanses. They were intimate gardens tethered to the rhythm of domestic life. Their proximity to the dwellings meant constant observation, easy protection from scavenging animals, and convenient access for watering or weeding. It was here, in these small, hand-tended plots, that the future of human civilization was quietly sown, one carefully placed seed at a time. The transition from gathering to planting was not marked by grand declarations or heroic feats, but by these countless quiet moments of intention, patience, and the profound, simple act of placing a seed in the earth, hoping for its return. It was a new kind of trust, a deep engagement with the cycle of life, laying the silent foundation for the agricultural societies that would shape human destiny for millennia to come. The earth, a silent witness, breathes with a deep, ancient rhythm. Here, in these fertile lands, a harmony of growth unfurls, a testament to wisdom whispered through millennia, a quiet understanding between diverse lives. This is the milpa, a cultivation method born of observation, a gentle, intricate dance orchestrated not by command but by the subtle needs of the plants themselves. Imagine a sun-drenched field, not in neat, monocrop rows stretching endlessly to the horizon, but a rich, layered tapestry of green, a living ecosystem in miniature. Tall, sturdy stalks of corn rise like emerald pillars, reaching for the warmth of the sky, their broad leaves catching the light, rustling with a soft, papery sigh in the occasional breeze. They are the silent guardians, the strong foundation. Beneath the towering corn, delicate bean vines begin their slow ascent, their tendrils, like tiny, searching fingers, delicately unfurl, feeling the air seeking purchase. They do not struggle or compete, but rather embrace the corn stalks, spiraling upwards in a slow, patient climb, drawing strength and support from their tall neighbors. These climbing beans, with their tender leaves and nascent pods, are more than just companions. They are the unseen alchemists of the soil. Deep within the earth, their roots form a silent pact with microscopic life, drawing nitrogen from the very air and fixing it into the soil, enriching it, nurturing it, preparing it for future growth. It is an act of pure giving, a quiet generosity that nourishes not only themselves, but also the hungry roots of the corn, the sprawling squash, and the very ground they share. And then, low to the earth, the squash plants unfurl their magnificent broad leaves. These are not merely leaves, they are nature's living umbrellas, splayed wide across the soil, creating a cool, shaded canopy. Beneath this leafy embrace, the ground remains moist, protected from the harsh glare of the sun, discouraging the relentless march of opportunistic weeds. The squash leaves act as a natural mulch, a soft green blanket that keeps the soil's precious moisture from evaporating, ensuring a consistent, gentle hydration for the intertwining roots beneath. Their gourds, some still small and pale, others swelling with the promise of sustenance, rest securely on the cool, damp earth, sheltered by their own magnificent foliage. It is a protective presence, a grounded, nurturing force in this quiet alliance. In this milpa, there is a constant, subtle conversation happening beneath the surface, a language of nutrients and microbes, of roots intertwining and reaching. The corn, with its deep hunger for nitrogen, benefits from the beans' quiet work. The beans, in turn, are given a natural trellis, a pathway to the sun, by the corn's unwavering height. And the squash, with its sprawling generosity, shields and conserves, creating a microclimate of peace and stability for the entire community. It is a slow, unhurried ballet, a dance of mutual benefit refined over thousands of years, long before concepts of crop rotation or companion planting were articulated in any formal text. It was simply known, felt, understood in the hands that tilled the soil, in the eyes that watched the plants grow. The milpa field itself hums with a barely perceptible life. The rustle of corn leaves, the soft flutter of an insect's wings, the gentle whisper of the wind weaving through the varied textures of green. There's a sense of ancient resilience here, a quiet confidence in the ability of life to find its balance, to flourish in thoughtful cooperation. It is a place of profound abundance born from intentional simplicity, a reflection of the unhurried rhythms of the natural world. The soil, rich and dark, cradles this quiet symbiosis, absorbing the sun's energy, transforming it into the vibrant life above, patiently awaiting the return of seed, the promise of another season, another cycle of giving and receiving. Every element contributes, every life plays its part, creating a tapestry of sustenance that has fed generations, sustained civilizations, all through this deep, abiding respect for the quiet power of interconnection. The milpa is more than just a farm. It is a philosophy etched in the earth, a living testament to the gentle, enduring wisdom of the earliest farmers, a model of sustained giving and quiet grace. Long before the milpa, long before the earliest whispers of cultivation, there was a time of beginnings, of trials and profound silent intent. A time when the very essence of humanity was being shaped, not from clay or wood, but from the most sacred of gifts from the earth. In the ancient texts of the Kachimaya, the Saipapabal Vu, a sacred chronicle written in the quiet shadows of a bygone era, the story of creation unfolds not with grand pronouncements, but with a patient, almost hesitant search for perfection. The heart of sky, the sovereign creator, and the other deities spoke their desires into being. Their voices like the soft murmur of distant winds through primordial forests. They yearned for beings who could speak, who could remember, who could praise them, beings endowed with genuine understanding. Their first attempts were fragile, imperfect. They molded beings from mud and earth, shaping them with careful, unseen hands. But these creatures, though formed, were without true substance. They crumbled, they dissolved, their forms losing definition even as they were made. Their speech was unintelligible, a mere gurgle. Their understanding a blank void. They were soft, pliable, without the strength to endure, without the mind to truly comprehend. The quiet disappointment of the creators hung in the humid air, a somber stillness settling over the nascent world. They were not what was desired. These early forms were destined to return to the earth from which they came, their fragile existence a mere whisper in the grand scheme. Then came the beings of wood. Carved with meticulous precision, their forms were strong, their postures upright. They moved, they spoke, their voices hollow echoes in the vastness. They walked the earth, they multiplied a semblance of life. Yet, even these wooden figures lacked the crucial spark. Their faces were expressionless, their hearts empty. They had no memory of their creators, no true understanding, no capacity for praise or reverence. They were stiff, unyielding, their movements mechanical, their minds devoid of genuine thought or feeling. Their existence was a dry, hollow mimicry of life, a clattering echo rather than a vibrant song. Their eventual destruction, a flood of resin and a rain of fire, was not a punishment, but a quiet act of necessary erasure, making way for a truer, more resonant creation. And so, in the stillness that followed, in the profound quiet of contemplation, the deities sought again. They sought a substance that held the essence of life, resilience and true understanding. Their gaze, ancient and far-seeing, fell upon a sacred mountain, a place where sustenance itself resided. This was the mountain of sustenance, and within its heart, hidden from casual sight, lay the treasure that would finally complete their grand design. Corn, not just any corn, but corn of different hues in white, yellow and white, red and black suvi, each kernel holding a unique facet of life's vibrant spectrum. With reverent hands, the deities gathered the corn. It was brought forth, husked, and then prepared, not with haste, but with a deliberate, sacred rhythm. The yellow and white corn specifically chosen was ground with care, slowly, methodically, until it became a fine, soft flour. The sound of the grinding was a soft, rhythmic whisper, a gentle prelude to creation, the oldest sound of human sustenance. Water pure and life-giving was then added, transforming the flour into a smooth, pliable dough, the masa of life itself. It was warm, fragrant, infused with the essence of the earth and the sun, a living material ready to be shaped. From this precious corn dough, the first true humans were finally formed. Their flesh was crafted from the rich yellow corn, their bones and sinews from the pure white. Their hearts were alive, imbued with the warmth of the earth, their minds clear, capable of thought, memory, and understanding. They were strong yet flexible, rooted in the earth, yet reaching for the heavens. Their voices, unlike the hollow echoes of the wooden people, resonated with genuine praise. Their eyes beheld the world with true vision, their hands capable of both creation and care. They understood the sun, the stars, the seasons, and most importantly, they understood their creators. This creation was not dramatic or violent, but a quiet unfolding, a gentle birthing from the most humble yet profound of earthly gifts. The corn, which had once been a mere plant, was now the very fabric of being, connecting humanity irrevocably to the soil, to the rhythms of growth, to the silent wisdom of the earth. The human body formed from this sacred dough carried within it the memory of the corn mountain, the whisper of the wind through the leaves, the golden warmth of the sun. And so humanity became, in essence, an extension of the corn itself, farty resilient, nurturing, and deeply connected to the land. This quiet origin story, woven into the fabric of time, reminds us of the profound, gentle link between the sustenance we eat and the very breath we take, a sacred pact made in the quiet dawn of human existence. As the sun begins its slow ascent, casting long, shifting shadows across the packed earth floor of the humble dwelling, a familiar rhythm begins to stir. The air, still cool from the night, carries the faint, mingled scent of wood smoke, damp soil, and the subtle, unique aroma of corn that has been quietly soaking. This is the nixtamal, kernels of dried corn gently steeped overnight in an alkaline solution, often made from limestone or wood ash. This ancient, transformative process has softened their tough outer skins, released their deep nutritional value, and imparted a delicate, earthy fragrance that promises the day's sustenance. It is a slow alchemy, working its magic in the darkness, preparing the core of life for the light of dawn. The woman of the household, with movements both practiced and unhurried, kneels before the fardaimatate, the ancient grinding stone. It is a foundational tool, a bedrock of daily life, often passed down through generations. This scimitanite is not merely a stone. It is a repository of countless hours of labor, its surface worn smooth and concave by the relentless rhythmic dance of the Findi mano, the hand stone. Its texture, cool and slightly gritty, feels familiar beneath her fingers, a tangible connection to all the women who have knelt here before her, performing this same sacred act. The Findi mano itself, a heavy elongated cylinder of stone, rests nearby, its weight and balance known intimately to her hand. She begins. With a quiet grace, she scoops a handful of the softened, nixtamalized corn kernels onto the upper, slightly sloped surface of the Fenti meditate. They are plump, ivory, or golden, or even deep blue depending on the ancient variety, glistening faintly with moisture. Her posture is one of deep, almost meditative concentration, kneeling back straight, hands gripping the firmly yet not rigidly. It is a position that speaks of both strength and humility, a direct connection to the earth beneath her. The first stroke is a gentle press and push. The mano descends upon the kernels, pushing them down the sloped surface of the thymate with a firm, deliberate motion. The sound is immediate, distinct, a low, resonant scrape, the stone on stone creating a deep, satisfying hum punctuated by the faint, muffled crackle of corn yielding under pressure. It is a sound that is echoed through these dwellings for thousands of years. The heartbeat of the home, the rhythm of nourishment being born. She repeats the motion, a steady, unwavering rhythm back and forth, push and pull. With each stroke, the corn kernels are crushed, abraded, transformed. The coarse broken pieces begin to form a rough paste, slowly working their way down the thorny Findi meditate surface. Every few strokes, she gathers the nascent paste from the lower edge, moving it back up to the higher surface, ensuring even grinding. Her hands, strong and calloused, move with an intuitive knowledge, a ballet of strength and precision. She knows instinctively how much pressure to apply, how fast to move, how to coax the kernels into their desired form. The scent in the small room begins to deepen. The subtle sweetness of the nixtamalized corn, earthy and warm, mingles with the faint aroma of the stone, of labor, of life being prepared. It is a comforting, foundational smell, the scent of sustenance itself. As the grinding continues, the coarse paste transforms, becoming finer, smoother, more uniform. The sound changes subtly too. The initial crackle gives way to a continuous, soft hiss, a whisper of smooth stone against smooth stone. As the masa, the corn dough, truly begins to form. It is pliable, moist, slightly sticky, a living testament to the patient transformation. Her movements become a meditation. The repetitive rhythm of the sudamano on the suvan meditate becomes hypnotic, a soothing pulse in the quiet morning. Her shoulders sway gently, her arms a continuous arc of motion. There is no haste, no frantic rush, only the steady, enduring commitment to the task. It is a time for quiet thought, for connection to the ancient lineage of women who have performed the same labor, for the simple, profound joy of creating sustenance from the earth's bounty. The pile of rich, creamy masa grows slowly, steadily, a testament to her patient effort, a promise of the warm, fragrant tortillas and tamales that will soon grace the family's simple meal. The light outside brightens, filtering through the doorway, illuminating the fine dust of corn that now clings to her tunic, to the edges of the summit to imitate. The work is nearly done. The masa, now a smooth, homogeneous mass, is gathered carefully, scraped from the stone, and placed into a waiting bowl. It is warm to the touch, soft and fragrant, the very essence of the corn, transformed by fire and water, stone and hand, ready for its final journey to nourish and sustain. The grinding stops. The quiet returns. But now it is a quiet imbued with the soft hum of fulfilled labor, of ancient rhythms honored, of life's daily bread made manifest. The silence after the rhythmic scraping is not empty but full, pregnant with the promise of food and the quiet dignity of a day well begun. The canvas of the ancient world was not uniformly painted with the hues we so readily recognize today. In the earliest fields beneath the generous sun of the Americas, the maize that sustained entire civilizations was not a singular golden wash. It unfurled its gifts in a spectrum far richer, far more intricate than the uniform yellow we largely associate with it now. Imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of a field in a time long past, perhaps a millennium or more before the great ships began to stitch together the distant continents. Here, the stalks stood tall, whispering their secrets to the passing breezes, each ear a treasure trove of unexpected beauty. The kernels themselves were like tiny, polished stones, each imbued with its own deep, resonant color. There were ears of profound, almost regal purples, so dark they held the essence of twilight, hinting at the depths of fertile earth and distant storms. These were not merely surface tints. The color often permeated the very core of the kernel, a testament to ancient genetic artistry. Alongside these, you would find strains of fiery reds, vibrant as a desert sunset, or the blush of berries ripened under a fierce sun. A warmth emanated from these crimson grains, suggesting the strength and vitality they imparted to those who consumed them. Then there were the blues, a surprising and ethereal shade, ranging from the delicate pale blue of a clear morning sky to the inky, almost metallic sheen of a deep ocean trench. These blue kernels, when ground, could yield flour with an unexpected hue, transforming everyday sustenance into an almost mystical experience. White, too, was a prominent color, not the bleached, uniform white of modern processing, but a creamy, natural ivory, often translucent, reflecting the light in soft, pearlescent gleams. This was the color of purity, of the moon, of quiet sustenance. And perhaps most captivating of all, there were the mottled and speckled varieties, each kernel a miniature abstract painting. Imagine grains dappled with splashes of purple on a white background, or streaked with red and gold like tiny precious bird eggs. Every ear was a unique mosaic, a testament to the wild diversity that bloomed before human intervention began to streamline and homogenize. These were not just different colors for the sake of aesthetics. Each shade often correlated with distinct qualities, sin variations in sweetness, in starch content, in the robustness of the plant itself, in its resistance to drought or disease. The ancient farmers, with their intimate knowledge of the land and its offerings, understood these subtle distinctions, selecting and nurturing each vibrant strain for specific purposes, for specific flavors, for specific offerings to their deities. This living palette was a deep connection to the earth, a visual feast that spoke volumes about the biodiversity of their world and their deep reverence for the plant that nourished them. When these kernels were harvested, they would fill baskets with an explosion of color, a vibrant tapestry woven by nature and human hands. When they were laid out to dry, the sun would catch their varied surfaces, making them shimmer like scattered jewels, a quiet testament to the enduring richness of the natural world, a silent promise of future meals, future celebrations, future generations. The familiar golden yellow, so ubiquitous in our modern perception of corn, was merely one strand in this magnificent, ancient rainbow, a color that, while eventually dominant, emerged from a far broader, more dazzling spectrum. It serves as a gentle reminder that what we often perceive as the norm is but a snapshot in a long evolving narrative of natural selection and human preference. This quiet, slow evolution of color and form, spanning millennia in the sun-drenched valleys of Mesoamerica, was about to embark on an entirely new chapter, one that would see its humble kernels carried far beyond the landscapes of their origin. It was a journey not of conquest or grand expeditions in the traditional sense, but a silent botanical migration propelled by human curiosity and the burgeoning spirit of exploration that swept across the European continent in the late 15th century. Imagine the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean, a restless, shimmering expanse that had for untold ages separated two entire worlds. On one side, the vibrant ancient civilizations of the Americas deeply intertwined with the corn plant. On the other, the kingdoms of Europe eager to discover, to claim, and to understand. It was upon the deck of a wooden caravel, perhaps the Santa Mara or one of its smaller, equally brave companions, that a few precious ears or a small pouch of these diverse corn kernels made their way. This was not a grand, ceremonial transfer, nor was it initially understood as the epoch-making event it would become. Rather, it was a quiet inclusion among countless other specimens gathered by curious hands. Christopher Columbus and his crew, upon encountering the plant in the Caribbean islands, would have observed its cultivation by the indigenous peoples, noted its role in their diet, and recognized its potential. But it was still an unknown, a curiosity. So carefully, perhaps reverently, a small quantity of corn was brought aboard. Picture the dimly lit cargo hold, a space filled with the scent of salt-laden wood, tar, and the faint, unsettling aroma of weeks at sea. The rhythmic creak of the ship's timbers, the constant lapping and groaning of the hull against the ceaseless waves, would have been the only sounds accompanying these seeds. They lay nestled amongst sacks of unfamiliar spices, exotic fruits, and other botanical wonders, each a silent ambassador from a world just discovered. These kernels, dormant and seemingly inert, held within them the blueprint of an entire agricultural revolution, the promise of sustenance for populations across the globe. They endured the long, arduous crossing, the unpredictable tempests that churned the vast ocean, the oppressive heat of the doldrums, and the constant, subtle rocking of the vessel. Each day of the journey, counted by the changing patterns of sunlight filtering into the hold, or the moon's pale glow on the distant horizon, was a test of endurance. The seeds, however, possessed an inherent resilience, a natural dormancy that allowed them to weather the journey, to await their new soil. Their journey across the deep blue was a testament to the patient power of life itself, waiting for the opportune moment to unfurl. They did not strive or struggle. They simply were, carrying their ancient heritage across a monumental divide, a quiet biological payload that would irrevocably alter the course of human history. This initial voyage, a journey measured in weeks and months, was merely the first tentative step in corn's slow, inexorable global migration. Upon their eventual arrival on the sun-kissed shores of Spain, these kernels did not immediately leap into prominence as the next great staple crop. The European palate and agricultural practices were deeply rooted in wheat, barley, and rye, grains that had sustained civilizations for millennia. The newly arrived corn, this strange grain from the Indies, was met with a blend of curiosity and skepticism. It was not instantly recognized for its incredible versatility or its immense potential to feed hungry masses. Instead, it was often relegated to a more ornamental role, a botanical curiosity, an exotic specimen to be admired rather than consumed as a primary food source. Imagine the grand, carefully manicured botanical gardens that flourished in the royal courts and noble estates across Spain, and eventually other parts of Europe. These were places of scientific inquiry and aesthetic pleasure, where newly discovered plants from distant lands were cultivated and studied. It was within these sheltered, often walled-off enclosures that the first corn kernels took root in European soil. Perhaps a gardener, intrigued by the description of this plant, meticulously prepared a small bed, carefully placing the seeds in the unfamiliar earth. The first sprouts would have emerged, a vibrant green against the European landscape, a sight that would have drawn the gaze of curious scholars, wealthy patrons, and perhaps even royalty. The early plants, with their tall, stately stalks and developing ears, would have been objects of wonder. Their novelty was their primary appeal. They stood apart from the familiar crops, a silent, living emblem of the vast, unexplored world that lay across the ocean. They were discussed in scholarly circles, sketched in botanical drawings, and presented as marvels of nature's diversity. But their purpose remained largely decorative or academic. The vibrant, multicolored ears, which had once been the very stuff of life for indigenous peoples, were now admired for their aesthetic beauty, their unusual form rather than their nutritional content. They adorned dinner tables as centerpieces, their husks carefully peeled back to reveal the shimmering jewel. Like kernels within, a topic of conversation rather than the foundation of a meal. This period of quiet observation and ornamental cultivation was a slow incubation, a time when corn, removed from its original context, patiently waited for its true value to be understood. It was a plant in transition, suspended between its ancient purpose and its future destiny. The initial disinterest in its culinary potential was not a rejection, but rather a reflection of cultural habit and the abundance of existing staples. The Europeans simply didn't yet know what to do with it, how to fully integrate it into their diets and agricultural systems. The methods of nixtamalization, so crucial for unlocking corn's full nutritional value and digestibility, were unknown. Without these traditional preparations, its appeal as a food was diminished. So, in these quiet gardens, amidst the roses and the herbs, the corn stalks grew, a silent testament to their resilience and adaptability. They adapted to the new climate, the different soils, and the curious, often indifferent gaze of their new human companions. This was a phase of gentle acclimatization, a period where the plant itself, in its unassuming way, began to lay the groundwork for its eventual, more profound integration into global agriculture. It was a waiting game, a slow unfolding of its destiny, patiently holding its promise within its kernels, beneath its green husks, in the quiet sunshine of European estates. The vessels, heavy with their silent cargo, journeyed onward, not just across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, but also down the long, winding coastlines of distant continents. It was a new world that awaited the maze, not of grand ceremonies or immediate adoration, but of quiet integration, a slow, gentle seepage into the fabric of life. The story continued, not with the fanfare of kings or the clash of empires, but with the subtle turning of the soil, the patient hand of the farmer, and the enduring resilience of a plant. In the quiet corners of African landscapes, the seeds found new homes. The initial reception was often one of curiosity, not necessity. It was a novelty, a botanical oddity brought from lands unimagined. Yet within its kernels lay an innate adaptability, a profound willingness to thrive where other crops struggled. Across the sprawling savannas, where the sun beat down with relentless intensity and rainfall could be a fleeting, precious gift, the imported grain began to whisper its promise. Farmers accustomed to the ancient rhythms of millet and sorghum observed it. They saw how it stood tall, even when the ground hardened and cracked, how its broad leaves seemed to cradle the morning dew, drawing sustenance from the very air. They experimented planting it in small, tentative plots, watching its growth with a quiet, observant patience that mirrored the plant's own slow unfolding. It wasn't a sudden revolution, no dramatic shift in agricultural practice. Instead, it was a gradual, almost imperceptible adoption. The maize found its niche, often in the marginal lands, the drier fringes where the established staples found the struggle too great. In the arid zones of West Africa, along the dusty trails that led to markets, and in the small family gardens tucked away from the main fields, its stalks began to rise. It offered a supplementary harvest, a form of insurance against the capricious nature of the weather. When the rains faltered and the millet heads were sparse, the maize often still offered a yield, a quiet testament to its enduring spirit. Its husks, often a rich, dry golden tan brown, rustled softly in the evening breeze, a new sound in landscapes steeped in ancient melodies. Across the continent, from the shores of the Gulf of Guinea to the fertile highlands of East Africa, the maize traveled. It moved with traders, with missionaries, and sometimes, simply with the wind carried inadvertently in the folds of cloth or the pockets of travelers. Each new region presented a slightly different challenge, a unique soil composition, a particular climate pattern. Yet with each quiet planting, the maize adapted, subtly altering its growth cycle, adjusting its resistance to local pests, as if engaging in a silent dialogue with the earth itself. The kernels, perhaps from a single ear, would multiply into entire fields, transforming vast stretches of land with their uniform green. The methods of cultivation were often simple, echoing the techniques honed over millennia. A hoe, a digging stick, the gentle placement of a few seeds into the soil, followed by the careful hilling of earth around the young plants. The sun, a constant, powerful presence, coaxed life from the ground. The occasional, life-giving rain would darken the earth, leaving behind a rich, damp smell that promised nourishment. There was a profound quietude to this process, a daily rhythm of tending and waiting, broken only by the chirping of insects or the distant cries of birds. The maize became a silent partner in this timeless dance, offering its bounty without complaint, a steady, reliable presence in a world that could often be unpredictable. It wasn't hailed as a miracle crop, it simply fortified. It became part of the landscape, part of the diet, part of the very air, its presence weaving itself into the tapestry of existence, a testament to its quiet power to adapt and endure. The simple act of boiling its kernels, grinding them into a coarse flour for porridges, or roasting them over an open fire, became a familiar, comforting ritual in countless homes, a quiet, sustained murmur of daily sustenance. Its leaves would eventually yellow and dry. The stalks would stand brittle and stark against the blue sky, a sign of a completed cycle, a life lived in humble service. The journey continued, an ever-and expanding, silent diaspora. From the ships that crossed the vast Western Ocean, the maize found itself on other vessels, sailing east, tracing the ancient maritime routes that had long connected continents. These voyages were not just of goods and gold, but of living seeds, each one a tiny capsule of agricultural potential, patiently waiting for new soil. When it arrived in the villages and towns of Asia, particularly in the sprawling landscapes of China, it did so with a similar quiet dignity, devoid of grand pronouncements. Rice, with its shimmering paddies and intricate irrigation systems, had long been the undisputed king of the lowlands. Wheat, hardy and resilient, held sway in the drier, northern plains. There seemed little room for a newcomer, yet the maize possessed a secret strength, a unique ability to flourish where its ancient brethren faltered. It was planted, tentatively at first, in the marginal lands, the steep, terraced hillsides where water was scarce and the soil thin, the drier, suns and baked plateaus, the forgotten corners of family plots. These were the challenging terrains, the places where other crops yielded only meager returns, or simply refused to grow. Here, the maize found its purpose. Its roots, deep and tenacious, anchored it firmly against the hillside erosion. Its sturdy stalk could withstand the buffeting winds that swept through mountain passes. It demanded less in terms of consistent moisture than rice and could tolerate poorer soil conditions than wheat. It was a crop of the fringes, the quiet achiever of the highlands, transforming barren slopes into vibrant patches of green. In these remote villages, often far removed from the imperial centers, it became known by names that spoke of its quiet significance. Yu Mai, the imperial grain, a title perhaps hinting at its exotic origins or its eventual widespread adoption. Or Yushushu, Yishashashat, the jade zan-like sorghum, a beautiful descriptor that evoked the glistening, jeweled and toned kernels. The names themselves were whispers, not shouts of its growing importance. It offered a different kind of sustenance. Its kernels, when ground, produced a coarse flour, distinct from rice or wheat. This flour became the basis for simple, hearty fare, thick porridges that warmed the belly on cold mountain mornings, steamed breads with a distinct earthy sweetness, or robust pancakes cooked over crackling fires. For communities living on the edge of subsistence, the maize became a crucial safety net, a reliable provider in times of scarcity, a quiet guardian against hunger. Its cultivation required a different rhythm, one of patient tending to individual plants, often hand-zan sown and hand-zan harvested from steep, uneven fields. The sound of its stalks rustling in the wind became a familiar symphony in these mountainscapes, blending with the distant calls of shepherds or the murmur of unseen streams. Its presence was not one of overt dominance, but of quiet, persistent permeation, subtly reshaping the agricultural landscape without erasing the old. It was an addition, a diversification, a silent promise of food where before there was often only rock and stubborn scrub. The dry rustle of the leaves, the faint, sweet scent of the drying cobs under the autumn sun became intrinsic parts of the sensory landscape, a testament to a quiet, enduring presence. It simply blended in, a part of the daily struggle and triumph, a humble yet powerful thread woven into the fabric of daily life. Its origins a distant memory, its presence an undeniable reality. And so, across continents and through centuries, the maze continued its subtle transformation, not only in its outward journey, but in its very essence. As it spread, humans, with their innate curiosity and their patient, persistent observation, began to discern the subtle differences that arose within the species. These were not grand, sudden mutations, but quiet variations, almost imperceptible shifts in genetics, nurtured and guided by the hands that sowed the seeds. The earliest farmers had simply chosen the better plants avid, those with softer husks, larger kernels, or more numerous seeds. Over countless generations, this slow, deliberate selection, spanning millennia, began to solidify distinct traits. By the time maize had embarked on its global journey, it had already diversified into a spectrum of types, each with its unique characteristics, each silently awaiting its particular purpose. One of the most widespread forms to emerge was what we now know as podded corn. Its name comes from the small, characteristic indentation or dent that forms on the crown of each kernel as it dries. Imagine a field stretching to the horizon, filled with stalks rising high, their leaves a deep, rich green under the sun. When the cobs are husked, one sees rows of robust, often golden or creamy and white kernels. Run your thumb over them, and you'll feel the slight dip, a tiny crater on each one. This dent is caused by the different drying rates of the two types of starch within the kernel. The soft, floury starch at the center, and the harder, vitreous starch on the sides. The soft starch shrinks more rapidly, pulling the top inward. Dent corn is substantial, its kernels dense and packed with energy. It produces a significant yield, making it an incredibly efficient feed for livestock, its rich nutrients converting into the muscle and milk of farm animals. Its husks, often thick and fibrous, guard the precious kernels until harvest. When dried, these kernels fall like small, hard pebbles, clattering into vast pins, forming mountains of potential. It is also the workhorse of industry, processed into starches, oils, and the numerous derivative products that quietly permeate modern life, its silent transformation continuing in factories and laboratories. Then there is fibbed flint corn, a type that evokes images of ancient robustness. These kernels are hard, smooth, and typically rounded, almost like tiny polished beads or pebbles. When you hold a handful, they feel dense and incredibly resilient. Each kernel a small, self-contained contained sphere of compact energy. There is no dent here, as the hard, vitreous starch encases the entire kernel, giving it a glassy, translucent appearance. This type is particularly cold and tolerant and resistant to insect damage, a testament to its ancient lineage and its ability to survive in harsher climates. Flint corn often boasts a stunning array of colors: sidey deep reds, vibrant blues, rich purples, mottled browns, and brilliant yellows pudding, turning a harvested cob into a natural work of art, a silent mosaic crafted by generations of selection. The sound of flint corn kernels being poured into a wooden bowl is distinct, a sharper, higher and pitched clinking compared to the softer thud of dent corn, Its hardness means it stores exceptionally well, patiently awaiting its moment to be ground or cooked. For millennia, it was a staple in many indigenous cultures, its hardiness and long storage life proving invaluable, its silent strength supporting entire communities through long winters. Next, consider flour corn. As its name suggests, this variety is characterized by kernels that are predominantly composed of soft, starchy endosperm, with very little of the hard, vitreous starch found in flint or dent corn. Touch a flour corn kernel, and it feels noticeably softer, almost crumbly to the pressure of a thumbnail. These kernels are typically large and plump, often a creamy white or a pale blue. The primary advantage of flour corn lies in its ease of grinding. Unlike the sturdy flint or dent varieties, which require more effort to break down, flour corn yields a fine, soft meal with relatively little effort. Imagine the rhythmic scrape of a grinding stone against these soft kernels, releasing a fine, powdery flour that floats gently in the air, carrying a subtle, sweet, earthy aroma. This characteristic made it invaluable for traditional cooking, particularly for making masa, the dough used for tortillas and tamales, forming the cornerstone of Mesoamerican cuisine for thousands of years. The ease with which it transforms from kernel to powder made it a precious gift for those who relied on manual labor for food preparation. A quiet efficiency that lightened the daily burden, its soft surrender to the mill a testament to its purpose. These are the silent, enduring forms, each a testament to a long, slow conversation between plant and human, a dialogue spoken not in words, but in the subtle shifting of genes, the patient hand in the soil, and the quiet appreciation of a gift that took 10,000 years to unfold. The story of corn told through countless generations, and the gentle hand of observation often speaks of patience. Yet sometimes, even within that vast, unhurried tapestry, there are moments of unexpected grace, small deviations from the expected, that quietly blossom into something entirely new. Such was the case with the emergence of what we now lovingly call sweet corn. For millennia, corn was a sturdy staple, its kernels destined for grinding into flour, for nixtamalization into masa, or for the satisfying burst of popcorn. Its sweetness was subtle, a fleeting note quickly transformed by fire or stone. But then, a quiet genetic shift occurred, a delicate whisper in the vast genetic code of a single plant, a slight alteration that would profoundly change its destiny and our palate. Imagine, if you will, the serene landscape of an 18th century farm in the Eastern American colonies. The sun rises, painting the sky with soft hues, over fields stretching gently towards the horizon. Farmers, with their weathered hands and eyes accustomed to the slow rhythms of the earth, move through their daily routines. They plant, they tend, they harvest. Their lives are deeply intertwined with the soil, with the subtle variations that each growing season brings. They understand that nature, in its boundless wisdom, sometimes presents gifts, small departures from the norm that, if noticed and nurtured, can become something truly special. It was in just such a setting, a tranquil corner of a vast field, that the ancestor of our modern sweet corn first made its unassuming appearance. It was not a dramatic event, not a thunderclap of discovery, but rather a slow, almost imperceptible unfolding. Perhaps a farmer, harvesting the daily sustenance for their family and livestock, noticed a particular ear of corn. Its kernels, perhaps, felt a little softer, a touch more tender to the touch than its neighboring stalks. Or perhaps, when boiled over a crackling fire, it yielded a flavor profile that lingered on the tongue with a delicate, unfamiliar sweetness, a departure from the hearty, starchy taste they had known for generations. This wasn't the robust, deeply satisfying starchiness of flour corn, nor the flinty resistance of hard grain destined for popping. No, this was something else. A whisper of sugar and ephemeral lightness. This difference, initially, might have been dismissed as an anomaly, a singular quirk of a single plant. But the patient eye of the farmer attuned to the slightest variations in their crops would have registered it, tucked it away in the quiet corners of their memory. And then, perhaps, in the following season, they might have deliberately sought out the seeds from that particular ear, planting them with a quiet sense of curiosity. It was a conscious act of gentle selection, guided by taste and observation, rather than a scientific experiment. They weren't seeking to understand the underlying genetics, merely to reproduce a pleasing outcome. This initial recognition, this patient cultivation of a subtle mutation, was the genesis of sweet corn. The mutation itself was a simple one, a delicate alteration in the genes that control the conversion of sugar into starch within the developing kernel. In most corn varieties, as the kernel matures, the sugars produced by photosynthesis are rapidly converted and stored as starch. But in sweet corn, this conversion is slowed, or sometimes entirely inhibited, allowing the sugars to accumulate, to remain, to define the very essence of the kernel. It's a remarkable, almost poetic defiance of the usual trajectory, a choice for transient sweetness over long-term starchy storage. And it was a choice made by nature, then quietly affirmed and amplified by human hands. Generation after generation, those who recognized and appreciated this unique sweetness would have carefully selected the best ears from their sweet-tasting plants, saving their seeds, and planting them again. This was a long, unhurried process, a testament to the quiet power of repeated, intentional selection. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It was a gradual refinement, a slow journey of focusing the sweetness, encouraging the tenderness, and ensuring the viability of this new, delightful variant. The fields would continue to stretch, the seasons would continue to turn, and amidst the familiar rustle of the starchy corn, a new, sweeter rustle began to emerge, growing steadily more prominent over time. Think of the farmers, their days filled with the simple rhythmic tasks of agriculture. The soft earth beneath their bare feet, the warmth of the sun on their skin, the quiet conversation of wind through the leaves. They wouldn't have understood the precise molecular mechanism of the sugar to starch conversion, but they understood taste. They understood the subtle joy of biting into a truly tender, sweet kernel, a burst of delicate flavor on the tongue. And so they preserved it, nurtured it, and allowed it to flourish. This quiet discovery, this unhurried cultivation, unfolded not in a laboratory, but in the open air, under the wide sky, within the steady, patient rhythm of agrarian life. And so, what began as a barely perceptible genetic whisper became a cherished crop. From those early American fields, sweet corn began its own gentle journey, spreading slowly but steadily to other regions, other farms, eventually finding its way onto tables around the world. It was a quiet revolution, a subtle shift in what corn could be, from merely a hearty staple to a delicate vegetable, savored for its inherent ephemeral sweetness. It remains a testament to the small, often unnoticed, gifts that nature sometimes offers, and to the patient human hand that learns to recognize, appreciate, and preserve them. It reminds us that even within the grand ancient story of corn, there is always room for a gentle, sweet surprise, unfolding slowly, gracefully, in a sun-drenched field. Now, let us turn our attention to another fascinating transformation, one that takes place within the kernel itself, a story of stored energy and sudden release, the quiet physics of popcorn. It begins with a specific type of corn known as zea mays evertai, or simply popping corn. Unlike its sweeter or starchier cousins, this particular variety holds a secret within its hard, glassy casing. Imagine a single perfectly formed kernel, small and unassuming, with a smooth, almost polished exterior. It appears solid, immutable, a tiny amber or white bead, waiting. But within that hard shell, a miniature universe of potential energy lies dormant. The secret of popcorn lies in its unique internal structure and its specific moisture content. Each kernel contains a small amount of water, typically around 13 to 14%, carefully encased within a dense, starchy endosperm. This endosperm is surrounded by a remarkably strong, impermeable pericarp, the outer hull. This hull is key. It's a tiny, natural pressure cooker, designed by millennia of evolution to protect its precious contents. Imagine this kernel resting quietly, perhaps in a clay pot over a low, flickering fire, or within the gentle hum of a modern popping machine. As heat is slowly and steadily applied, this tiny capsule begins its transformation. The external temperature rises imperceptibly at first, then with a gradual, gentle increase. Inside the kernel, the trapped moisture begins to warm. It shifts from a liquid state to a gaseous one, becoming water vapor, steam. But unlike an open pot of boiling water where steam escapes freely, here the steam has nowhere to go. It is contained, pressurized, growing in intensity with each passing degree of heat. The starch within the endosperm simultaneously begins to soften, to gelatinize, becoming pliable under the increasing internal pressure. This process is not violent, not sudden, until the very last moment. It's a slow, quiet build-up, a patient accumulation of energy. The internal pressure within that tiny kernel can rise to astonishing levels, sometimes as high as 9 atmospheres 70. That is roughly equivalent to the pressure at the bottom of a 90-meter deep swimming pool. The strong pericarp, the hull, holds fast, resisting, containing, until it simply can no longer do so. It reaches its breaking point, a precise threshold where the structural integrity of the hull gives way to the relentless expanding force within. And then, it happens, not with a deafening explosion but with a sudden decisive rupture. The precise moment of its breaking is almost elegant in its simplicity. The hull cracks, a tiny, almost inaudible snap for a single kernel, a gentle pop. But this is not merely a crack. It is a rapid, almost instantaneous decompression. The superheated steam, suddenly released, expands explosively. As it escapes, it causes the softened, gelatinized starch within the kernel to rapidly inflate, to puff outwards, to invert itself. It turns the kernel inside out, creating the familiar, fluffy, irregular shape we recognize as popcorn. The starch, which was once a compact, dense mass, becomes an airy, porous, textured cloud. It cools almost instantly, solidifying into its new form, light and fragile. The tiny amount of moisture, the carefully calibrated water content, is what orchestrates this entire process. Too little, and there won't be enough steam to generate the necessary pressure. Too much, and the hull might soften prematurely, allowing the steam to escape without the explosive expansion. It is a delicate balance, a marvel of natural engineering, honed over millennia. Imagine the earliest humans perhaps gathered around a cooking fire in ancient Mexico, tossing ears of this particular corn into the embers. The quiet crackle of the fire, the flickering light, and then from within the heat, the unexpected sound of 40, a tiny 40 pot. Then another, then many more, as kernels burst forth, transforming from hard, inedible grains into soft, palatable puffs. It must have seemed like magic, a quiet miracle of transformation, a gift from the corn itself. This was not a scientific discovery driven by inquiry, but an accidental sensory encounter that revealed a hidden potential. The physics of popcorn, therefore, is not just about pressure and heat. It's about a silent promise held within a seed, a transformation waiting patiently for the right conditions. It speaks to the contained energy that exists everywhere around us, waiting for its moment to be released, to manifest, to surprise. Each popped kernel is a miniature testament to the power of transformation, a simple, comforting reminder of the quiet, yet profound forces at play in the natural world. It is a sound and a texture that has brought gentle joy and comfort to countless generations. A simple pleasure born from the most fundamental physical processes, unfolding with unhurried precision. The quiet hum of the heat, the patient build-up, and then the delicate, yet definitive, defined pot, a tiny punctuation mark in the grand, continuous narrative of corn. And now, as we gently drift through these stories, let us invite another sensory experience, one that speaks directly to the soul of the corn itself, the sound of the cornfield. Imagine yourself, if you will, standing at the edge of a vast field, stretching as far as the eye can see under a benevolent sun. The stalks stand tall, reaching towards the sky, their green leaves broad and abundant, each one a miniature solar panel patiently drawing energy from the light. The earth beneath your feet is warm, perhaps a little dry, carrying the faint, earthy scent of soil and sun-baked leaves. Step deeper into the field, allowing the towering stalks to enclose you. The world outside begins to recede, its sharp edges softened, its hurried noises muted. Here within the embrace of the corn, a different soundscape emerges. It is a soundscape dominated by the wind, but not a harsh, blustery wind. Instead, it is a gentle, almost meditative breath, weaving its way through the dense foliage. Listen closely. The first sound you hear is a soft, rhythmic thunder rustle. It's the sound of the broad, flat leaves brushing against each other, 1,000 tiny whispers, a continuous murmur that washes over you. It is a sound that is both immense and intimate, the collective voice of countless individual leaves, each one dancing to the invisible currents of the air. This rustle is not uniform. It ebbs and flows, rises and falls. Sometimes a stronger gust passes through, creating a wave of sound, a deeper, more resonant sigh that moves through the field like an ocean swell, receding as quickly as it arrived. Then there are the subtle creaks and groans of the stalks themselves. As the wind pushes against their sturdy, fibrous bodies, they sway, their structural integrity tested and affirmed. You might hear the gentle friction of stalk against stalk, a soft, dry squeak, like an old wooden beam settling into its place. These are the sounds of growth, of resilience, of a living architecture responding to the forces of nature. They are sounds of quiet strength, of enduring presence. The air itself within the cornfield seems to carry a different quality. It feels stiller, warmer, laden with the scent of green growing things, of pollen, of the very essence of summer. And within this stillness, if you listen carefully enough, you might perceive other, more delicate sounds. The faint, almost inaudible hum of insects, a solitary bee moving purposefully from tassel to silk, the tiny buzzing of a beetle navigating the labyrinthine leaves. These are the unsung orchestrations of the field, subtle counterpoints to the dominant symphony of the wind and leaves. The sound of the cornfield is deeply reassuring. It is a sound that speaks of bounty, of sustenance, of the earth's quiet generosity. There is no urgency in this sound, no demand. It's simply teosinte. It is the sound of life unfolding at its own deliberate pace, of energy being captured, transformed, and held within the countless kernels slowly maturing on the cob. It is a sound that invites contemplation, that encourages the mind to slow its racing thoughts and simply be in the moment. Imagine the light, too, filtering through the dense canopy of leaves. It creates a mosaic of shifting patterns on the ground, dappled shadows dancing in gentle rhythm with the wind's invisible hand. The light itself seems to hum, to resonate with the soft sounds, creating a complete, immersive sensory experience. This vast green expanse swaying and whispering evokes a sense of profound peace. It is the sound of enduring life, of an ancient partnership between plant and sun and soil, continuing its steady, unhurried journey. As you stand there, enveloped by the rustling whispers, you become part of this ancient rhythm. The sounds fill your ears, gently pushing out other thoughts, other worries. There is a vastness here, a sense of infinite repetition, yet each rustle, each creak, each sigh is unique, a fleeting moment in the grand, continuous flow of nature. It's a sound that has echoed across thousands of years, witnessed by countless generations of farmers and wanderers, a constant reminder of the quiet, enduring power of the earth. The cornfield does not rush, it does not clamor for attention. It simply stands, tall and abundant, singing its quiet song to the passing breeze, a lullaby of growth and sustenance. Now, let's bring this journey from the vastness of the field into the small, quiet space of your own two hands. Imagine, if you will, that you are holding an uncooked cob of corn. Just feel it for a moment. Feel its weight. It is surprisingly heavy, dense with moisture and life. It has a reassuring solidity. It is not a perfect cylinder. It has a gentle taper, a natural organic shape sculpted by its growth. Your fingers can feel the subtle ridges running its length, the lines formed by the tightly wrapped layers of its protective husk. The outer leaves are a pale, sun-bleached green, almost the color of dry hay. They feel papery to the touch, slightly rough, with a texture like old parchment. You can hear the faint, crisp rustle they make as you turn the cob over in your hands. It's a dry, whispering sound, the sound of late summer. These outer layers have faced the sun and the wind. They are the guardians of the treasure within, and they wear the story of their time in the field on their surface. Now begin to peel it back. Find the tip where the leaves converge, and use your thumbs to pry the first layer away. There's a satisfying tear, a sound like ripping thick paper. The leaf pulls away with a gentle resistance, revealing the layer beneath. This next layer is a different shade of green, softer, more vibrant. It feels smoother, cooler to the touch, having been protected from the direct sun. It has more moisture in it, a subtle dewiness. As you pull this layer back, you might see fine, parallel veins running its length, a delicate roadmap of its own structure. Continue this process, peeling back layer after layer. With each one, the color becomes paler, shifting from a soft green to a creamy, buttery yellow-white. The texture changes too. The innermost leaves are silky smooth, almost waxy. They are tender and pliable, and as you peel them away from the cob, they release a faint, sweet, grassy smell. It's the scent of a freshly cut lawn, of chlorophyll and earth and clean water. It is the raw, living perfume of the plant itself. It is a quiet scent, one you have to lean in close to notice, a small reward for your gentle work. And as you peel back these final, tender layers, you begin to encounter the silk, a cascade of fine, pale threads spilling out from the tip of the cob. It is a marvel of natural engineering. It feels like the finest thread, cooler than the husk, softer than anything you've touched so far. It might be a pale, translucent gold or a deeper shade of amber or burgundy, depending on the variety. It clings. It clings to the kernels. It clings to the inside of the husk, and it clings gently to your fingers as you try to brush it away. There is so much of it, a tangled, shimmering web. This is the conduit through which life flowed into every single kernel you are about to see. Each thread corresponds to a single potential seed, a delicate network of communication. Take a moment to feel its unique texture, this impossible fineness, before you gently pull it away. And then the reveal, as the last of the silk is brushed aside. You see it, the cob itself, rows and rows of kernels, nestled together in a perfect repeating pattern. It is a masterpiece of natural geometry. The rows are not always perfectly straight. They might have a slight, gentle spiral to them, a subtle twist that follows the cob's growth. The kernels themselves are like jewels, plump, smooth, and glistening with their own internal moisture. They are not a flat, uniform yellow. Look closer. You will see a dozen shades. A creamy white at the base of each kernel, where it joins the cob, deepening into a rich, golden yellow at its rounded tip. Some might even have a translucent quality, where the light seems to penetrate the first layer of skin, making them glow from within. Run your thumb over them. The surface is smooth but not glassy. It has a fine texture, a skin that is holding all that sweetness inside. You can feel the distinct shape of each individual kernel, the slight divot between one and the next. If you press down gently with your thumbnail on a single kernel, you can feel the tension of that skin, the firmness of the life packed inside, a tiny explosion of milky starch waiting for the right moment. It feels alive. It feels full of potential. You can feel the incredible order of it all. This dense packing of hundreds of seeds, each one a perfect copy of the next, all aligned, all facing outward, a silent, patient army of sustenance. This single object in your hands is a work of art, a collaboration between the sun, the soil, and 100 centuries of quiet observation. It is a thing of profound and simple beauty, and for a moment just hold it and appreciate the silent, intricate perfection of this humble, miraculous thing. This cob of corn, this dense and perfect object, is more than just a plant. It is a companion. It is the result of a partnership that began so long ago it has faded into the quiet realm of deep time. It is a story of a silent agreement made between a wandering human and a resilient wild grass. A journey of 10,000 years held here in the palm of your hand. Think back to its ancestor, the teosinte, a scraggly branching weed with a handful of seeds, each one locked away in a casing as hard as a pebble. There was no promise in it. There was no hint of the abundance to come. It was just another plant struggling for its place under the hot Mexican sun. But something in it, some latent possibility, caught a human eye. Not with a flash of insight, not with a moment of discovery, but with the slow, repetitive, practical attention of someone simply trying to find their next meal. The partnership was not a conscious one, not at first. It was a dance of unintentional selection. A person chose a particular stalk of teosinte, perhaps because its seeds were a tiny bit larger, or its hard casing was a fraction easier to crack. They ate those seeds and a few were dropped near their settlement. Those seeds carrying that tiny favorable trait grew. The next year the process was repeated, and again, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. An act of selection so slow, so gradual, it was utterly invisible to those who were performing it. They were not trying to create a new plant, they were just living. And in the simple act of living, they became the quiet sculptors of a new species. The teosinte, in turn, began to change. It was a slow and patient transformation. Over centuries, that stone hard casing softened, thinned, and eventually vanished, a piece of ancient armor no longer needed under the care of its new companion. Its branching, sprawling form began to consolidate, to focus its energy inward. The scattered seeds began to gather together, clinging to a single, central stalk, the first, primitive version of a cob. It was a gesture of trust. The plant gave up its ability to spread its own seeds, to shatter and scatter in the wind. It placed its entire future, its very survival, in the hands of these humans. In return, the humans offered it a new kind of survival. They cleared away the competing weeds. They saved its seeds from the winter frost. They carried it with them on their long migrations to new valleys, new soils, new continents. This journey was one of profound patience. There was no hero in this story. No single farmer, no brilliant scientist. The hero was the lineage itself. 1,000 generations of anonymous hands planting, tending, harvesting. 1,000 generations of quiet observation, noticing which plants grew tallest, which cobs were fullest, which kernels tasted sweetest. It was a conversation between a species and a plant, spoken not in words, but in the language of cycles, of seasons, of planting and harvest, year after year after year. And so this humble grass left its home in the Balsas River Valley. It traveled north across the deserts, becoming a cornerstone of vast civilizations. It traveled south through the jungles and into the high Andes. And then, in the hold of a wooden ship, it made a silent, dark journey across the greatest ocean on Earth. It arrived on the shores of Europe, a curiosity, a strange new plant for the gardens of kings. But its true journey was not in palaces. It was in the small plots of earth tended by peasants, It spread, a quiet wave of green and gold across the globe. It found a home in the fertile plains of Africa, where it could withstand the dry seasons. It climbed the terraced mountains of Asia, growing in places where rice could not. It became a global citizen. Everywhere it went, it adapted. It changed its color, its size, its texture. It became red and blue and black and white. It became the hard flint corn of the north and the soft flower corn of the south. It learned to grow in short seasons and long ones, in wet climates and dry ones. But it never forgot its partnership. It could no longer survive on its own. Its seeds, now soft and exposed, clustered tightly on a cob, wrapped in a protective husk, could not disperse themselves. It had become utterly, completely reliant on the human hand to open that husk, to shell those kernels, and to plant them again in the spring. This journey, this 10,000-year collaboration, is a testament to the power of quiet, persistent attention. It is a story about how the smallest choices, repeated over an unimaginable length of time, can transform the world. This corn in your hand is the living embodiment of that story. It is a wild grass that became a global wanderer, a humble weed that became a pillar of civilization, a silent, patient partner in the long, slow story of humanity, a 10,000-year companion. The story is now complete. The journey from a wild grass in a forgotten valley through millennia of patient hands across oceans and continents has come to its quiet conclusion. All that history, all that effort, all that time now rests in a single final sensation, and that is the scent of warmth, of sunshine, of the earth itself. So let go of the story now. Let the images of ancient fields and patient farmers dissolve, and just focus on your breath and on a simple, comforting smell. Imagine the scent of a single cob of corn freshly cooked. It has been steamed or boiled, and it radiates a gentle, comforting warmth. And with that warmth comes a smell of pure, uncomplicated goodness. It is a sweet smell, but not a sugary sweetness. It is an earthy sweetness. It is the smell of starches turning into sugars, the smell of life itself being unlocked by warmth. It carries the memory of the sun. It smells like a warm, dry afternoon in a field, the scent of the golden tassels, of the dry husks, all concentrated into a single gentle aroma. It is the smell of the color yellow, the smell of contentment. Breathe it in, slowly and deeply. Imagine that warm, sweet, earthy scent filling your lungs. It is a clean scent, a simple scent. It carries no demands, no complexities. It is the smell of nourishment, the smell of home. It is a scent of safety and peace, a quiet promise that all is well. And as you breathe out, release everything else. Release the day, release the thoughts that have been circling in your mind. Let them drift away, becoming as light and as formless as the steam rising from that warm cob of corn. Let them disappear into the quiet air around you. Breathe in the gentle, sweet scent of sunshine and earth. Breathe out and let your body grow heavy and relaxed. Feel the space behind your eyes soften. Feel your jaw unclench. Feel your shoulders release their grip and sink down into the mattress beneath you. Every breath you take in is filled with that warm, comforting, simple scent. And every breath you let out carries away a little more tension, a little more of the world outside. There is nothing left to do. The journey is over. The fields are quiet, resting under a dark and peaceful sky. The long day's work is done. All that is left is this moment, this quiet, this warmth, this simple good smell that says it is time to rest. Let that feeling of warmth spread from your chest down through your body. A slow, gentle wave of relaxation. It moves down your arms to the very tips of your fingers. It moves down through your legs to the soles of your feet. You are warm, you are comfortable, and you are safe. The sweet smell of corn is the smell of summer's end, of a harvest gathered in, of a job well done. It is the scent of deep and deserved rest. Let it be your anchor to this present moment of peace, and let this moment carry you gently into sleep. Breathe in the warmth. Breathe out the day. Good night. Drift now into the quiet, into the warmth, into a deep and peaceful sleep. Rest now, sleep